Hello everyone and welcome to the 7th installment of Q&A. Before we start, let me explain how this episode was made. I actually made the 6th Q&A and decided that it was a bit too long for my poor sound editor, so I split it into halves. That meant that this half didn't have an introduction or an ending. So both the introduction and the ending were recorded later than the episode itself, and because the episode itself was recorded during the famous coughing bout of 2018-2019, the sound will be tad wonky, so I apologize in advance for that. Also, before we start, please remember to check the podcast that I have with a friend of mine, M. The podcast is called Church Mouse Chronicles, and you can find it at churchmouse.show. Also, link is in the description and in the pinned comment. So, let us begin. Joshua Niemand asks, what is your favorite food during the borderline vegan periods of the year? Also, can you do a video or give opinion on mystic monks? There are two dishes that I really like. Vegan pesto with pasta and tuna pate again with pasta. This is how I make vegan pesto. I mix basil, boiled spinach, olive oil, garlic and pine nuts or walnuts because they are cheaper and mix them in a food processor. It is similar with tuna pate. You take ordinary tuna can, drain the oil, and mix it with olive oil, garlic, ketchup or tomato paste or even mustard, and again you mix it in a food processor and put it all on pasta. As for the mystic monks, I will do the lives of the venerable saints on reliquary. Beli Svet asks, why did the Serbian Orthodox Church exclude the laity, monks, deacons and priests from the church councils? Only the bishops remain. Does that mean that the Serbian Orthodox Church has ceased to be one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church? Well, on one side, it is always a good thing to have representatives of different church ranks during councils. However, it is also the most important duty of the bishops to oversee the church. That is why they attend the councils, whereas the presence of other ranks is optional. David Anthony de la Cruz asks, what is your opinion on Eastern Rite Roman Catholics, since they use the liturgies such as the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom and have a spirituality that is very similar to Eastern Orthodox Church? Moreover, what do you think about the fact that a lot of Eastern Rite churches were once Eastern Orthodox but have later joined in communion with Rome? Also, John Smith also asks, what do you think about the Eastern Catholics? Well, they're still Catholics, even if all the trappings are Eastern, and I don't think you can go full Eastern spirituality without the Orthodox teaching on the divine light and God's energies. As for the Eastern Orthodox churches joining Rome, there is a nice slur for that, but I won't be using the U word on this channel. At least in the Balkans, we have a very bad opinion of the Eastern Rite Catholics, the one that isn't shared and shouldn't be shared in modern times, as initially it was intended to organize Eastern Rite parishes in a deceptive way to get the Orthodox into the fold. If you think that I'm overreacting, there is a quite a number of Orthodox saints that are accepted in the Catholic Church, even if they're post-schism. The sole reason for that is to get the Orthodox to convert to Catholicism. Donut Cup asks, how effective is prayer? This is a very complicated question, but for now I'll just say it's extremely effective. However, it is not always effective in the ways you want it to be. Prayer is primarily our act of love towards God and our fellow neighbor, and in that sense it is always absolutely effective. However, as a means to achieve supernatural effects, it depends on a lot of factors. Regina Garcia asks, how do Orthodox do their confessions? We generally don't have confessionals, and if we do, it is just a separate room for confession. It is done before an icon of Christ. The confession begins with a priest reading a prayer before confession, where the penitent is warned not to omit any sins, in order that, instead of receiving healing, he would live with a double sin. Then the penitent lists his or her sins. We generally don't state the number of times we have sinned. Of course, the priest may comment or give counsels. After the confession is over, the priest will put his epitrachilion, that is, his stole, over the penitent and read the absolution prayer. Sometimes the entire confession will be done with the penitent having the epitrachilion over his or her head. There are some regional variances. For example, in Georgia, the penitent holds a gospel and a cross in his or her hand during the confession. He also asks, do you know St. Joseph at Kunčević and what do you think of him? In short, the saint of one church is an apostate in another church. Of course, I don't think one should be murdered for conversion. Dean Carolean asks, what do you think about the LGBT community? I think that the primary problem of the LGBT community is that it tells you to identify yourself with your sexuality. This is a bad advice even for straight people, but especially with LGBTQ plus whatever people. They may not say that per se, but it is what it boils down to. Of course, LGBTQ people deserve all of our Christian love, but that does not extend to community at large. Michael Lindhorn asks, I heard from a deacon that the Archdiocese of Finland is the only Orthodox church which is recognized to allow the collecting of taxes. Is this true, or does he only mean of those under Constantinople, or only through the state? Finnish Orthodox Church has a deal, as it were, with the state of Finland to collect church taxes that are used for the upkeep of buildings and to finance clergy. Such arrangements aren't uncommon, they exist in Austria, for example, and they're one of the ways for the church to sustain itself. Of course, this tax is levied only on the church members. Jacob Sparks asks, what do you think of Kebane the Christian's YouTube channel? I like it a lot, and my Wrath of God series is inspired by his own video on Wrath of God. Jacob Raji asks, in the Eastern Catholic Syro-Malabar Church, we dip the body of Christ into the chalice and then administer it into the tongues of the faithful. Is this how the Orthodox do it? Or do you drink from the chalice like the Latin Catholics? In the Eastern Orthodox Church, consecrated bread is put into the chalice and then administered to the faithful via a spoon. Depending on the different liturgies, we might receive communion in different ways. I myself have received communion on hand and directly from the chalice on a number of occasions. Dr. Sniper LT asks, how should he deal with a friend who claims to be asexual, but does not respect personal space or physical boundaries with cuddling and similar behavior? He also asks, how should we deal with LGBT people? Well, as I said before, we should deal with the LGBTQ individuals as with anyone else, with love. Of course, that does not include accepting their views which aren't in line with Christianity. Your friend should know that there are limits and social conventions and that generally guys don't kiss and snuggle. Simply tell him that you're not comfortable with the way he's acting towards you, but that it does not mean that you're not his friend. I assume he'll have enough social intelligence and common sense not to press on out of spite. Well, that's it for today. As always, if you want to post a question for a Q&A episode, please remember to post it on the most recent Q&A. Otherwise, I will miss it out. Bye!